Hey everyone, welcome to this great presentation that Heidi and I did for the Pathfinders community. The Pathfinders Power Platform community is a great group led by Marin, who's trying to help give people the resources and the mentoring that they need to get careers in the Power Platform. In this presentation, Heidi Neuhauser and I gave an overview of the Power Platform and Dataverse and talked about some of the Dynamcis first-party apps that we can work with. So the beginning of this presentation, we didn't quite get recorded, so I'm going to start the recording where we started, but I encourage you to go to my blog at kyliekiser.com to look at all the slides and check out the beginning. The pieces you missed is we talked about a few key user stories and some of the digital transformation that you can do with the Power Platform. We do want to encourage you to just think about what's possible, right? All the things that you can do with low code and how you can empower your users. I hope you enjoy the rest of the presentation. Thanks.
And, I worked with a financial services company as well for a long time, and it was the same thing. Everything was being done in Excel. And a big thing that we struggled with is like lack of consistent reporting, right? Because we'd have marketing exporting things and then they're telling their own data story. And then when we had eventually a data team who had all their official reporting, and when their numbers don't line up with what marketing is saying, like then we have a big problem, and just lack of transparency because they're not able to, they don't know what, we don't know where everybody's getting their numbers, when they exported it, all kinds of stuff. And that's like a huge value to like the Power Platform and just doing everything together, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not to mention, every time I see an organization that has all these Excel spreadsheets, there's an Excel whiz on staff there, right? They've made some really impressive formulas that are going to grab from a bunch of different spreadsheets. But I do always question when I see a really heavily like Excel-based organization, what if one of your formulas is wrong in one cell somewhere and it's rolling up and leadership is making all of these decisions based on bad data, but you don't know it's bad data because it's just maybe somebody typed a 1 instead of an 11, Right. So lots of opportunities to change. And if you work for someone who has Excel and that is how you do your work, all hope is not lost. You can learn some of the cool things today and implement some really nice apps or a great Dynamix 365 system and really change the way that business works there.
Any questions or comments before we keep going? Any hands raised yet? So I guess we're good to go.
I went through this too quickly. That was 15 minutes. I'm going to try to slow down. Okay. Now we're going to dive into the Power Platform. And the next several slides have come to us from Microsoft to tell us what we should think about with the Power Platform. So the first slide here is very, very simple. The need for digital resistance has never been greater. Obviously, times have changed, right? I talked about this in my one story. COVID happened. Everybody was forced. If you had in-person business, you were forced to change, no matter if you wanted to or not. And it kind of accelerated the speed of digital transformation for a lot of companies. So the demand for automation for things like the Power Platform and Dynamix 365 is increasing. And the next slide is going to give you a couple little stats too. And they're calling this the App Gap Challenge. So there's a growing demand for apps, but not enough developers to build them, right? So 500 new apps will be built in the next 5 years. Isn't that crazy? More than all apps built in the last 40 years. And a lot of this is because of the great accessible technology that we have for the Power Platform. It's so easy to spin up an app. Kylie and I could probably spin one up in 15 minutes for us here, live on the call. And maybe we will later. So the next stat here is 5 times faster demand for mobile apps than IT departments can deliver. Historically speaking, it takes a long time to make an app. And if you're talking about an app that you want to deploy, like an iOS app or any app, you're talking a very specialized skill set until Power Platform. Now it's more accessible and easier to build and deploy these things than it ever has been before. And the last stat here, 86% of organizations struggle to find technical talent to build apps. It's hard to find the right person. It's a very specialized skill set and a very expensive skill set. So all of these are reasons why Power Platform is an awesome thing that's coming here, because I think it meets all of these things. You can build apps faster. You can build apps smarter. You can build mobile apps way faster than you could before. And you don't need a very specialized skill set. You need what you're going to learn today, right? You guys can, after this call, you're going to be able to build these apps. You will be part of that 86% of the talent that needs to do all this. So the next slide is going to talk a little bit about the business side, right? So what are your business challenges? What are the IT challenges? What are the reasons why people don't implement, right? Number one, budget constraints. I don't know about you, Kylie, but on the partner side, that happened a lot during COVID, right? Companies were forced to change, and all of a sudden, there were huge budgetary constraints because nobody really knew what was going to happen. The next is talking to that third point on the prior slide, time and resource constraints. Who has time to learn how to build an app for us? We need a mobile app to offer service X to our customer base. Well, that's great, but I don't have a person to do that. Everybody's busy. They're all doing something else. They're all working on these weekly reports for their managers that they have to send in. So time and resource constraints are a huge, huge wall that you'll have to face. Rising customer expectations. Everybody demands the solution right now. In fact, I'd like 3 different solutions to the problem that I have 5 minutes ago. So customers have high expectations, and you are expected to meet those in spite of the budget constraints, the time constraints, the resource constraints. Paper processes, we talked about that in our stories. A lot of companies are still using paper-based processes, and it's hard to convince people to do things a new way. You have to find the right way to tell that story. You have to find the right way to translate it. And I think a lot of overcoming that objection comes down to you understanding how your people work, what's important to them. If I put this, like I put it in terms of hours saved for sales, that's a beautiful way to do that. But you know your user groups, right? Like what is going to speak to people to make it better? I'm going to give you an app and you're going to be able to scan business cards when you're on the trade show floor. And then you don't have to enter anything in the tablet anymore. You know, that might resonate well. Or if you're working with customer service reps who are writing things down, be like, look, I'm going to do this app for you. And then you're not going to have to go to all these different screens and keep like 5 tabs open. You just need one. So again, you'll learn based on your users and how they work. Like what's the best language to get through on that. New digital business models. This is like a change management thing, you know, it's hard to embrace change, and moving from a manual or paper-based process can be really difficult to bring your users all the way to the digital business model. IT and business partnerships. This, I think, comes to how your organization is set up, how large you might be, if you're private, if you're public. But you'll know how IT and the business work together and how to navigate that. Limited agility, which I think is along with the icon above it, time and resource constraints. Your need for differentiation, technical skill shortages, we talked about that before, and security and compliance risks. So all of these things are different reasons why organizations might not embrace the change. These are some constraints that you might come up against as you're implementing. But if we go to the next slide, this is, you know, like summing it all up. Low code development can address all of those challenges. Now you don't need that specialized skill set. Low code, yay, we can build all of this ourselves. We can become citizen developers, and you can configure these apps using low code or even no code, which is even better. And it's showing you a stat here that there are more than 1,000 transformation scenarios that have been identified but untouched. And what is the reason? In the blue section there, there's not enough resources with traditional development tools. There's no app for that, but you can build the app for that, which is really cool. So our next slide is going to talk a little bit more about that, using the right tools for the job. So Power Platform has 5 main components to it, and we're going to talk about that in the next several minutes. They help you meet business demand faster. You're accelerating the front end and the business process development by using the toolkit. You're reducing your costs, 74% reduction in app development costs. I think that's versus using a traditional app developer or someone with custom software. Seamless app deployment. So that sounds nice, right? Improve your security posture and manage your application lifecycle seamlessly. Lots of buzzwords in that one. And then effortless integration and extensibility. I really like how extendable the Power Platform is. It gives you a really good base, and then you can push it so much farther. And we're going to talk more about that when we get into Power Automate. So the last thing we'll read on the slides at the bottom, she went too fast. Power Apps provides a low-code approach to rapidly build apps for any device. So if any of you have built apps before, you had to build it for iOS, or you had to build it for like the Play Store, and they were different. And there was a framework that you could build on top of to do all of it at once, but that required a different skill set too, which was a more expensive developer. So now you're building apps for any device while seamlessly working with Azure-based services through a rich professional developer extensibility model. So exciting. Which brings us to the Power Platform. Powerful alone, even better together. So these are the components of the Power Platform. We have Power Pages, which is the newest member of the Power Platform. We've got Power Apps. These are model-driven apps or Canvas apps, if you've heard those terms before. Power Automate, Power BI, and Power Virtual Agents. And in the middle, this slide seriously needs to be updated. Now there's over 800 connectors and Dataverse. We're going to talk about both of those a little bit more too. But this is the Power Platform. If you implement one of these, it's awesome. If you implement two of them and you connect them together, it's even more awesome. And you can implement all of them and then do complete digital transformation, but you don't have to do all of them. One piece, two pieces, whatever makes sense for your business. And then we're going to move into Dynamics 365. How many of you are familiar with Dynamics 365? Can you there's like reactions at the top. I just want to gauge like how knowledgeable you are. If you could do like the like thing if you know what Dynamics 365 is. I do, so I'm going to hit the like. Oh, cool. I see a couple things. Awesome. So Dynamics 365 might mean different things to different people when you hear it, right? To me, it means Dynamics 365 CRM or customer engagement, because that's where I've come from. That's where my background is. Now, if you say this to some other people that work in digital transformation, Dynamics 365 is an ERP solution. It's business central to some people. It's F&O, finance and ops to other people. Dynamics 365 is a very large platform. But if we're going to talk about it in context of Power Platform, we're mostly talking about customer engagement or the CRM. The others don't sit on top of the same platform yet. Will they? Maybe, probably, someday. But the entire Dynamics 365 is about engaging your customers, right? So that's traditional CRM or the customer engagement model of Dynamics 365. Optimize operations. That's going to be more like your finance and operations. Transform products, business central if you're a smaller organization. And then empower employees. That's the HR branch, which I honestly don't remember what it's called right now. Do you remember, Kylie? Is it Dynamics for Human Resources?
I think it might just be Dynamics for Human Resources. And yeah. I think what's cool is like there's specific products that do each of these things on this slide like we're talking about. But any of the Dynamics products we're going to talk about can have elements of each of these pieces too, right? Mm-hmm. So don't think that just because you want to optimize operations, you need to do this specific operations product. Like there's an opportunity to do that with all these different tools that we're talking about, right?
Good point. Good thing to point out. Mm-hmm. And at the center of all this is your data model, which again, we're going to talk more about. So data, intelligence, and actionable items that you can take. So let's dive into the first part of the Power Platform, my favorite Power Apps. Oh no, the slide's not animated. There it is. Okay, cool. So Kylie's going to press play, and then this is like a nice graphic that's showing you how darn easy it is to build a model-driven app in Power Apps. So everything's done in what's called the Maker portal. That's make.powerapps.com. And right here, this demo is showing you how we're going to build a new model-driven app. And this is a great low-code tool. You can actually no-code tool, depending on your implementation. And it's apps that you build that your users interact with. So Power Apps is what you would build for your internal employees. This isn't something that you can push externally. That's going to be a different part of the Power Platform. And as you can see, it's got this great drag and drop interface. It's really intuitive. It's really simple to build an app. Now, I forgot to take portals out because late breaking news 2 months ago, Power Portals is its own thing. But these could be model-driven apps or they could be Canvas apps. And the big difference between those two is what your database is. So model-driven apps are built off of Dataverse, and that's the only option. So if you're building an app on top of a Dataverse database, it's model-driven app. If you want to use a different database and you care more about the design of your app than the database and having a relational database, that could be a Canvas app. And a lot of people will build these from Microsoft Teams. So if you're building an app from Microsoft Teams, you're building a Canvas app. And that is the quickest way I think I can describe what the difference is. I want to pause and see if anyone has questions about this, or if you have anything else you want to know about Power Apps that I didn't talk about. So we have a lot of content to get through today, and I want to make sure we have plenty of time to answer any questions that you might have. So any questions, anything you want to know more about in the wonderful world of Power Apps? While you're thinking of your questions and typing them, I'm also going to add that I am a huge proponent for user adoption, and I encourage people to think about your users as you're implementing your technology changes, starting with how is this going to make their life easier. And model-driven apps and Canvas apps is such a huge win in user adoption at your organization. So on Power Apps and these model-driven apps, like the demo that you saw here, that kind of walked us through building it. Nice thing about this is streamlining what your users can see. So I like to build a model-driven app for each user group in the organization. I'm working with one right now that has like a billing app. So their app is streamlined just for what the billing team needs to do. And I've got one for the scheduling team. So the scheduling team has an app and it's only got like the 3 areas they care about. And then there's like an admin app where it's like everything. So management can check it out and see all that stuff. I see Kylie's putting some stuff in there. So you got some more links. You can learn more about model-driven apps. I'm a big fan of them. So if you have any questions, let me know. I love talking about this stuff. In fact, if anyone's going to Dynamix Con Live, I'll be talking about model-driven apps for an hour there.
Yeah, I was just thinking you had some good YouTube videos on exactly what you're talking about. So I dropped in your video about getting started with model-driven apps, but I think you also somewhere have a video about what you were saying about different apps for different groups and showing and hiding things there.
Yeah.
But
I'll find that
that's
when you're talking.
One problem. Yeah. Problem for
all right,
later.
No questions. All right,
okay.
I guess we're ready to move on to my second favorite part of the Power Platform. These might be organized by my personal favorites. So next up is Power Automate. So we talked earlier in our intro to Power App slides about how you can extend the Power Platform, and the way you do that is Power Automate. So the way in the olden days, before Power Platform, we would have to create custom integrations using some third-party tools like Scribe or Kingsway Soft, or just completely custom integrations from one system to the other. It required a lot of custom work and a very large check that you're going to pay to whoever's implementing that for you. Power Automate is so cool because it takes away that really cumbersome integration between the two. And now you've got this wrapper on an API. So Power Automate is built with connectors. Right now, there's more than 800 connectors. These are 800 services that have nothing to do with Power Platform. These are things like email marketing or calendars or news events or weather or climate change. Like anything you can think of, there's a connector for that. And this, again, is just a wrapper around an API, which allows you to connect to it. So I have a screenshot here, and this is just giving you an example of a flow. So Power Automate connections, we call them flows. And I've created a flow where when somebody is going to fill out a form, this is Gravity Forms on the WordPress platform. When a form is submitted, my second group here is a condition. So if there's a file, I'm going to follow my yes path, which is on the left. And please interrupt me if I'm going too fast. I know Power Automate can get confusing really fast, but it's super logical. It's like math class. So when this happens, I get this condition. If my condition is positive, this example is showing you I want to get the file from that form submission, and I want to create a SharePoint file in a list. So I'm taking that file that a user submitted through a form and I'm moving it to SharePoint. If there's no file, I just stop. I don't want to do anything. So that's an example of a flow that I actually wrote, which is why I showed it, right? It's better than some hypothetical thing. This is a flow that I have running right now. So you're automating manual tasks where maybe my users would have to get an email with a file attachment, and then they'd open up SharePoint and they'd upload the file to the right place. So now it's automated and nobody has to worry about doing anything manually. It's all about taking away manual steps and automating things. It's just happen. When a condition's met, I want this to happen. Now there's different types of flows that you can build. This one runs when a condition is met. But there's also cool ones that you can put inside of your apps where you push a button, right? So start my flow, and then I push this button, and then I want this automation to happen. The last bullet point that I have here on this slide is important. No code will get you started, but I don't think of Power Automate as a no-code solution. You're going to need to learn some complicated things with flows and writing expressions. So low code will get you started, but I oftentimes have to ping my handy developer friend to help me with some more complicated flows and writing expressions, just because that's out of my comfort zone. I'm not a highly technical person. I'm more on the business side of things, but I can get started with Power Automate and then kind of inject in what I need for expressions. So yeah, Kylie put in the comments here, is this making sense? Is it? You're all being very quiet. I'm nervous that I'm like totally missing the mark. I'd love to see you and like make sure you like this. Is this cool? We'll take that as a yes. I love Power Automate.
I love your comment too around not fully low code, but I think what I like about a lot of these things is, I mean, all of this is still online. So kind of how I've been working recently is, we have a lot of different offshore developers or consultants, and I'll like make the base and then be like, hey, I got stuck. I need your help. And then I send it to him, and overnight he works some magic and does the hard stuff. And then we come back, and we can work together on this, which is really great. And, I know you and Nick do the exact same thing.
We do. I'm also stealing your screen share for a moment because I think it is helpful when we're talking about Power Automate. There's 802 connectors, and they're all here in the center. And on the left-hand side are kind of your use cases. So I just threw out a few, but there is some neat ones, right? Like barcode. If you want to automate the scanning of a barcode and then have that kick off a lot of other steps, you could do this. Business Central, so anything that's tied with BC that you want. There was a really cool thing where a bunch of independent publishers came out about climate change that would help organizations kind of take action. If that makes sense for you, there were some really cool use cases where you could have a Canvas app that's going to give you all of this climate information for this area that you're going to visit or you're going to analyze for doing business. I thought that was kind of cool. But there's just a ton of stuff. There's a lot of marketing use cases in here. I don't really know how to describe how far you can take Power Automate other than telling you, like, you can go so many places by implementing Power Automate. A really big one that we've seen that's really popular is around documents. So whether you want to automatically create documents, you want to do document scanning, you want to have some sort of document signing solution, everything's automated. And you can check out any one of these, like Adobe Sign. Triggers. So every flow starts with a trigger. If this condition is met, I want all of these things to happen. And all of those things that happen afterwards are called actions. So we'll look at Adobe Sign because that's a really popular add-on here. So for this, an example, if I want to trigger when a new agreement is created, when an agreement is sent to a participant, when an event occurs, all this fun stuff. So let's say we want to do when an event occurs. So this would be like somebody signed my document. So when this happens, maybe I want to notify the approval team and I want to launch a process, right? Or I want to email a certain person, or I want to take a copy of that signed PDF and move it to SharePoint, whatever makes sense. I can have other things happen way outside of this area, way outside of document signing. And maybe I want to take an action, like I want to get the status of an agreement and inject that into another automation that I have. Does that make sense? Guys are so quiet.
And quickly, I dropped the link in the chat for the connector review that you're looking at. And this is like an amazing thing that Heidi and her hubby Nick put together. So part of one of the services that re-enhance their you know, company delivers to the community, right? All of this stuff she's showing, like this is stuff that they have built and deliver free of charge for all of us to look at, which is just like an amazing resource.
Thanks. I will add real quickly, we built this because we needed something like this. Microsoft documentation is good if you know what you want to implement. And the reason why we built this in the first place was I wanted we needed to move to an email marketing vendor, and we wanted to have it, something that was connected to Power Automate. We wanted a simple connector so we could automate a lot of stuff. So this is the first use case. I wanted to see what email connectors we have. We went with Aweber, by the way, which I didn't rate very highly. It does have some things it doesn't have, but it gets me what I need.
Yeah, and I think that's true with so many of these community content things, right? Like all of us, anyone who's contributing to the community, right? We ran into a problem and we were like, oh, how do I fix it? And then we either shared that solution with others or we blogged about it so we wouldn't forget later. So like
Right.
A lot of times if you're running into an issue, you're probably not the first one. And so search around and probably one of us hopefully has written about it or delivered a solution to help with that.
Yep. That's exactly right. I like this translation one too. This is kind of a newer thing. We haven't seen a lot of this, but these are some really cool connectors if you want to automatically translate text, which is neat. All right.
Why don't you talk about your least favorite connectors, the fun ones?
All right. I added a tag for fun because all of a sudden there seemed to be a lot of connectors that I thought didn't fit in the Power Platform. And the first one that came out, I thought it was hilarious. It was Chuck Norris. It's a random Chuck Norris joke. And it was funny to have a few, but these keep coming up. There's 21. And I just made a couple thoughts, comments, questions. Is this an appropriate place for all of these silly connectors, fun connectors, right? Like I feel like the Power Platform is for business automation and productivity. And I was just questioning why there's so many.
As you can tell, Heidi is anti-fun. No, I did want to bring that up because these are, they're silly. Maybe they don't have a business use, but they are things that you can just use, right? So as you're learning, if you create a trial and you want to create some Power Automate things, this might be something that you can do that's a little bit different, right? And try something out that might resonate more with your personal life and just help you to learn some of the functionality, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This is my favorite, Lord of the Rings.
Or you can make your own connectors just like these people.
That's true.
Yeah. All right, I'll steal your share back.
I was going to say, I'll stop sharing now. So no questions about Power Automate? All right, I hope it all makes sense. But again, just remember, this is a way to automate manual tasks. It connects to multiple systems.
People are listening because we've been chatting about how it's Marin's birthday. Remember, she told us that our
Oh,
presentation was her birthday present. So
happy
big
birthday.
shout out, happy birthday to Marin. Okay, Power
Thank you.
BI.
Okay, Power BI is next, and this is pretty cool too. This is another animation. If you can push play, it'll walk through a demo. And I'm sorry I recorded all these demos, but in my experience, connection issues always happen. So I like to have a nice backup here. So is that not playing? It's not playing, is it? This is just me building a Power BI dashboard. And the cool thing about Power BI is there are multiple raw data sources. So you can use Excel, you can use Dataverse.
This weekend.
Yeah. Again, I do apologize.
Asphalt, could you mute? Thank you. Okay,
Got it.
I thought he was really excited about Power BI. I was like, what do
You were so ready.
So Power BI allows you to have a lot of raw data services. So all of the different sources can cull together in Power BI, and you can have one easy reporting mechanism, which is super cool. So things like Dataverse, SQL Server, text, even a CSV file, data feed, and using Power BI data sets from others and data flows, you can have everything together in one dashboard without connecting it all other than in Power BI. It allows you to have drill down analytics to analyze data and spot trends. There are some really neat things that you can do here. On the left-hand side of this demo is showing you some different slicers that have been added. So if I want to filter this, so this is our finance report, and you can see, I don't know if you can see, it's kind of tiny depending on your screen resolution, but on that left-hand side, you can filter by year, by quarter, and look, you click that and it just totally changes the data in real time. There's no delay. You click that button and it kind of refreshes things. There are some really neat visualization options here that look at your data and add like AI stuff. Like you can ask questions and it'll answer it for you. So there's a lot of neat things that you can do here. There's the map, which I like a lot. So that's showing you that finance report like on a geographic map, so you can start to see things in different ways. And with any of these, you can click on any bar, any point, any graph, and really drill down to that specific data. It's a super helpful tool. Management loves something like this. I'd say it's less useful for a user. Some users will like it, but this is like a giant win for management and executive groups. Neat things, though, you can embed a Power BI dashboard in a Canvas app or a model-driven app. So I love that because you don't need to go somewhere else. You can interact with all of these different Power Platform areas from one spot, which is really neat. So I can have a Power app, which has some connectors to Power Automate, which are automating manual tasks. I can have a Power BI dashboard on my model-driven app that's going to bring together my ERP system and my CRM system without creating a custom integration between the two. And I can start to interact with my data, make decisions, check out forecasting, lots of neat things you can do with Power BI. It's very cool. Is anyone here using Power BI? You can just do a thumbs up reaction or put it in the chat. All right.
We got a couple, yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, is there a hand raised? It's got a little hand raised icon.
Oh,
it went away.
Just hand raised to say they probably use Power BI, but they don't want you to call on them. Oh, we have a good question here. Is SQL knowledge required to use Power BI?
Oh, great question. Absolutely not. No. You might need to know a little bit about SQL querying if you're going to add that SQL Server raw data source. But actually, I don't think you need to, because you can query that differently in Power BI. It's a completely different interface that you're really just clicking and making lines between data points. It's pretty cool. Awesome.
And one thing I wanted to mention to this group too is everything we've been talking about is free to get started, right? Set up a trial and work on it for a while. But what's cool about Power BI is it's free if you're using it for yourself, right? The only time licensing comes into play is when you want to make it available to other people, right? So you can download this Power BI desktop and start loading in your own data and playing with all these reports. and that you can do all of that for free. And also, I think there's a lot of free data sources on the internet, right? So you can, I'd have to look up some of the links, but I know back in the day I did like a blog series about, I don't know, heroes or something, and I downloaded like all these like data sets just that people had compiled about like superheroes with their powers or something like that. And so there's lots of like free data you can download and just like load it into your Power BI and play with it.
Awesome. I see a question in the chat too, and you're going to lead me very nicely into a future one. But is it possible to embed Canvas apps in Power Portal to make it accessible by external users? Canvas apps are internal. Power Portal is external. So I do not believe you can view a Canvas app as an external user in Power Portal. Kylie?
I think I agree with that. You could embed a Power BI in a Power Portal or even in a publicly accessible website, because you could make your Power BI report publicly accessible. But
yeah, it all comes down to licensing, right? So if you want to see and work with a Canvas app, you need to be licensed for Power Apps. As an external user, you don't need a license for your user. I mean, the licensing for portals is very complicated and very different, and it's based on page speeds and logged in users. So, I mean, I guess you could hypothetically license a user to have both Canvas apps and Power Portal, but they'd need a license and an internal login. Yeah, I go back to my original. No, you can't.
I do know, I think that is something that's, I know that it's something that has been talked about a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's not, I suspect that's on Microsoft's radar. How can we make Canvas apps publicly accessible?
I agree. I am excited about the questions coming in.
Okay,
can we share a link to Power BI Desktop? Absolutely.
Got it.
With that. And if you are going to use Power BI, I am definitely a beginner in Power BI. I really like what it can do, but I still look it up. So when I started using Power BI, when I knew nothing about it, I was trying to use just the Power BI online. Don't do that. Download the desktop. It makes your life a heck of a lot easier.
So much easier.
Power BI Desktop for the win. Next question is awesome. What is the security threat you face when using connectors available on the internet? That's a wonderful question. So if you go back to connector review, we tagged them with GCC and GCC high. So that's one thing if you need to conform to either of those. Secondly, Microsoft certified connectors go through some rigorous testing and they have to pass a lot of checks. I know this because we've built them, and those I'd say are super safe to use. You can check with your IT department if there are any constraints on you beyond kind of the Microsoft certified check. There are different connectors, and those are the independent publisher connectors. Those still go through some of those tests, but not as many. And those you might want to double check on before you implement them. Does that make sense? Is that fair? Do you have any other thoughts on that, Kylie? I know you're big on security stuff.
I was trying to find somebody that they should follow on Twitter for Power BI and wasn't listening. But no, I heard a little bit of what you said. No, I think I agree. Any of this stuff, you want to read the documentation for that connector. And the other thing, did you mention data loss prevention policies?
No.
Oh, okay, cool. The other, yeah, Belinda Allen, she's good for Power BI. And anyways, yes, the other thing to mention, you want to read through the documentation for the connectors and look at who the publisher of the connector is. All of those connectors are vetted by Microsoft, but you still do want to do your own research and your testing, right? Like you don't want to be building any of this stuff in your production environment right away. You want to test that in a lower environment and make sure it's working as you expect it is. Mm-hmm. The other thing to do is to do some research on data loss prevention policies. And what this is we won't go into detail today, but just what it means is I have my list of my connectors and I determine which groups they fit into. So which ones can actually access business data versus which ones cannot. And this will make sure that I can say, okay, Twitter we're allowed to use, but it can't access any business data. But my Dynamix connector or my Dataverse connector and maybe my, I don't know, like the marketing connector, those ones can access our business data, right? And then you could put other things like Heidi's favorite Star Wars connector. We could put that blocked so nobody could even use that, right? So that means you can test these things out in your lower environments and figure it out. And then you can set up the data loss prevention policy and separate them so that other people, if you have other additional people building these, you know, you can make sure that they use them correctly and are not not using things they shouldn't be, right? And not publishing customer data to Twitter, stuff like that.
Yes, that would be bad. I put a link in with more information on exactly what Kylie was just talking about. Awesome. Any other questions on Power BI before we move on to Power Virtual Agents? Or Power Automate or Power Apps? Okay, let's go on to Power Virtual Agents, which is the one I personally am least comfortable with. I have built the chatbot you will see here in the demo, but full disclosure, I've never implemented this ever in my life other than this. So I can talk about it. I probably am not the best person to demo it. Maybe Kylie can tell you more, but this is really neat because it's a completely no-code solution. I can build a chatbot using no code, which is really cool. So the first thing you do when you build your chatbot is you select from a list of supported languages. Once you select your language, you cannot change it. So if you later decide you want to build a chatbot in Spanish, you'd have to build a new one. You can't take an existing one and just change that. It allows users to have conversations and take action. So this is where you can extend it a little farther, right? So we can have your chatbot through Power Virtual Agents and then add some connectors using Power Automate and then have things happen instead of just having a chatbot and having a conversation. So I think that's a really cool way to extend something like this. But again, I haven't really built them beyond this. So it's really neat how they come together. You're writing topics, you're building subjects, and you're doing yes, no paths and saying what the conversation is going to look like. It's super easy to get started. It took me about 5 minutes to do this, and I didn't look at documentation. It's extremely intuitive. So it makes a lot of sense. These, again, are at make.powerapps.com, and you're building a chatbot and virtual agents. So neat tool. I haven't used it yet other than a demo. Kylie, do you have anything else you want to add about Power Virtual Agents?
No, I was just trying to get if I click off this screen, then your demo stops playing. So make sure everybody can see that. But yeah, I think kind of my experience is similar to you. I just kind of played with it and tried it out, but it's really easy to get started. And I think that's what Roshona has been talking about at some of your other meetings too. And I think she's an expert. So yeah, lots of cool functionality. I think one of the things I thought was cool when I was playing with it is how we can combine that with the other tools. For example, Power Automate and I guess also AI Builder to combine together to do like sentiment analysis. So you could be like, how can I help you today? And based on what the people respond, you can determine, is this positive or negative? And then condition how you help them or how you respond to them based on that, which I think is really cool way to kind of personalize it and also make sure you can get help for the unhappy people quickly, right?
Absolutely. So, escalate to customer service supervisor now.
Yes.
Cool. All right, let's move on to the newest member of the Power Platform, which again was just announced recently. It's Power Pages. This used to be Power Apps Portals, which is still around, but Power Pages is really, really slick tool. It's not available in general availability yet. It's only in preview right now, I think. Did that change, Kylie?
No, still in preview.
So you can test drive this, but you can't build it yet. You can't actually create one of these and publish it. So the really neat thing about this, it kind of follows the path of everything we've been talking about. This is a low code solution. for an external portal. Now, this is how you would deliver information to people outside of your organization, to customers, to prospects, to anybody else that needs to view information that might be collected in Dynamics 365, in a Power App, in a Canvas app, and you want to display it, a different version of it, externally for your users. So this is really cool. It allows you to utilize the really great security model here. So you can take advantage of great security. So securely store and manage your data, collect business data from the site visitors with Dataverse and share it with external audiences. So if I have Dynamics 365 for sales or service, and I want to show someone who logs in, like maybe here are all of your active cases, here's the status, but I don't want to show them all the notes that my internal people are putting on their case. Like, man, Kylie was in such a bad mood today when she talked to me. She called to complain. Her sentiment analysis was negative. All that's hidden, and all the customer can see are like the 3 or 4 data points that you want them to see. And maybe you want them to be able to submit some documents to follow up on stuff. Whatever you need to do, that's what Power Pages is for. So the really cool thing too is there are a ton of templates out. So if you want to start on this, you don't have to build it from scratch. You used to have to build it from scratch, right? It's a white canvas, and then you need to know liquid code, and you need to build this as a developer. Someone like me, I could never do it. But this has templates, so I can apply one of the ready-to-use templates and get started. So the screenshot here is just showing you the click and drag functionality, the navigation on the left, and it's drag and drop. It feels a lot like Power Apps does. And finally, you get to design your pages with text, video, images, and business data forms and lists. Those are all the content types that you can drag and drop. So super cool new addition to the Power Platform, making it an even more awesome family of products.
Yeah, and I dropped a link in the chat for a presentation at my last chapter meeting with Jeff Abels, who I think is coming to talk to you guys in a couple weeks too. And he talked about kind of what is Power Pages, how does it compare to Power Apps portals, and walk through kind of initial building of some of those sites as well. So that'll hopefully be a good resource if you're interested in learning more about this.
Awesome. So I've only got 2 slides left, and then Kylie's going to take over.
Uh-oh.
So other fun parts of the platform. So Dataverse. Kylie's going to talk much more about Dataverse. But this is the foundation of the Power Platform. This is the Dataverse. It's what everything runs on top of. It used to be known as Common Data Service. It used to be known as Common Data Model. But today it's Dataverse, and you're going to learn a lot more about that soon. So I won't talk any more about it. Connectors we talked about, there's 802 today. It's growing every week, sometimes every day. So when you go and check connectorreview.com or the Microsoft documentation, you're going to see that number continue to increase. And that is how you're going to extend the Power Platform way beyond the confines of what you would expect. Finally, AI Builder. So Kylie talked a little bit about this too when we were talking about Power Virtual Agents. You can infuse AI into applications using AI Builder or cognitive services. Kylie did an awesome demo in my user group, and I'm going to post the link when she starts talking if you want to learn more about some of that, because it's awesome. The last thing I want to talk about is like, okay, great, we learned about Power Platform. What can I do with this? So these are a few of the things that you can do with all of this tech stack at your fingertips. You can build apps for your organization. You can automate manual tasks. You can integrate AI and cognitive services. You can integrate many different services on just one platform. You can help companies make better decisions, give employees more time in their day back, and most importantly, increase overall happiness. So that is what I had to share for you. I hope it was helpful about what the Power Platform is, how organizations have used it in the past, and where you might be able to take it. So Kylie, I'm going to hand it over to you to teach us more about Dataverse.
Perfect. And feel free, everyone, if you have other questions about what we talked about, put those in the chat. You know, it's fine if we jump back and talk about other things, you know, whatever we want to do. So yeah, we're going to talk about Dataverse. We're going to talk about what it is and, you know, how this is the foundation of the Power Platform and Dynamics. And then we're going to talk about those first party apps. So when you're looking at documentation, Dataverse used to be called the Common Data Service. And previously to that, well, and it's what all of Dynamix is built upon, right? So anytime we're talking about Dynamix or Dataverse, most of those topics can be interchangeable, right? Especially as we talk about like security, because any Dataverse security applies to your Dynamix security. That's all the same. And the other thing you also might hear about is the common data model, which I'm not going to talk about too much, but there's this kind of idea that there's a certain set of data that should be common across all applications, no matter where they come from. And that's stuff like your account, right? And your contacts. And so there is this concept of some of that data that's based on this common data model. But really, in practice, you don't have to worry about that. Just know that sometimes you'll hear those terms. So this is a slide that, or similar to one we looked at earlier, right? So we have all of these different components of the Power Platform, and at the center of that is Dataverse. And so all of this stuff that we're talking about, all of it can use Dataverse and be built upon Dataverse, especially with these tools we're talking about here. They don't necessarily have to use Dataverse, but they can, and generally we recommend it, right? So next few slides here, similar to some of the ones we looked at with Heidi, we took a lot of these from the App in a Day presentation, and just as a side note, all the materials for App in a Day, all of that's available for free, and you can just download it and work on that on your own. Or Microsoft or different partners might offer App in a Day courses or for free, right? So you just join in and it provides all the resources so you can build a whole app. But anyways, so what is Dataverse? It allows you to securely store and manage all of the data used in your apps. And so it's a single system of record for all of that business data that's going to be used across multiple places. And we're going to be storing this data in tables. So some old documentation, or probably even presentations you've heard Heidi and I do, we'll probably use the terms entity instead of table, but now they're calling them tables to be more in line with kind of database terminology. But basically we have these entities or tables that we create to store the data in. And within those tables, we're going to create columns or fields that we can store specific types of data in. And what's cool, I think it comes up on some of our other slides too, is we have the ability to select different data types, so we can make sure that this is a well-organized data set, right? And we can set it up to support all of our business needs. Excuse me. And then on top of that, we can build our apps, and we can also build validation using things like business rules. And we can also talk about security. We'll talk about that in a minute. So some more things to know about Dataverse. There's some standard tables that are available out of the box, like the account that I talked about. And also some of those standard tables are Dataverse core, but there's some additional standard tables that are part of some of the Dynamix first-party apps that we're going to talk about. And so these standard tables can be extended. So on our account, maybe we want to track a special account. Maybe we want to track a budget of that account, right? And maybe there's not an existing field for that. We can create an additional custom field for that, or we could create additional relationships. And we can also create our own custom tables. So that's a new table to support something that's not part of the common data model, like I talked about. And then we could create relationships between the standard tables and those custom tables if we want to. We also have the ability to create calculated and roll up fields. Heidi and I just did a video talking about those a little bit, but you can create, there's a lot of different functionality that I can do within Dataverse to either calculate additional data, maybe roll up related data, or add kind of some validation. So I have this idea of these business rules that I could use to show and hide things on the form, make fields required, and all kinds of things like that. And then, like we've mentioned a few times, all of this has a sophisticated security model. So one of the big benefits of creating your apps on top of Dataverse is that all of that security is built in. And I have a fun slide for that coming up in a little bit. But all of that security is built in and built on top of the Microsoft Active Directory, right? So I already have all that Microsoft security, and then I have this other security to that I can use to control who has access to what data, and provides really great functionality there and a very high level of confidence in your security, so you don't have to worry about people seeing things that they don't need to see. And of course, all of this can be extended with professional developers if needed, but hopefully we don't need them, right? Cool. So this is just like what we've been talking about. We have all of our Dynamix. These are our first party Dynamix applications right here that we're going to talk about. Or we can make our own model driven apps or Canvas apps, or a developer could write an app. We could have all these things, and all of this is built on top of our Power Apps, right? On top of our Power Platform. And you'll see the kind of foundation of all of this is Dataverse, right? So we have all of this different functionality, all of these things that we can do in here, and then we have all our apps on top of that. Perfect. So like we said, here's our details. We're going to securely manage that data. We can model our real world relationships with these tables and relationships. And excuse me. And then we can do our role-based security down to the column level. So that's something that has been called out a few times on these slides. Excuse me, apparently my throat decided to not like me talking today. Yeah, so it's called out a few times on these slides. Our security is not just at the record level, but it could be all the way down to the field or column level. So one thing that a good example is like our social security number, right? So I might have my social security number on my contact, and I want some people to see it and other people not to see that. And we can support that with field level or column level security. Great question in the chat. Does Microsoft evaluate commonly built custom tables in order to make them standard? I'll say yes and no. So part of the updates that are always coming out right in the release waves are new things like new features for sales, for example, which could include new standard tables, and or things also like the accelerators. So there's things like the healthcare nonprofit accelerators that contain additional tables as a part of those tools. So I think those would be new standard tables that would be available. If you have a table that you're using for the same process, right? I don't think there'd be an easy way to kind of convert that into a standard table, right? So if Microsoft did release a new standard table for something you're doing from custom, you would probably still keep using your custom table unless you wanted to take advantage of new functionality that they're bringing in that standard table, if that makes any sense. Do you have anything to add to that, Heidi?
No, I think Industry Accelerator is the only place that they're pushing out additional custom tables. I don't think I've ever seen them change the core tables that you get in like Dynamix for Sales or Service.
Right. Yeah, I guess I'm thinking like when marketing came out, there was a whole bunch of new tables, but they're only in marketing, and their tables probably haven't changed for a while. Yeah.
I just wrote a blog about industry accelerators, so I'm gonna
perfect.
Put it in the chat.
Everything Heidi ever thinks about or asks about becomes a blog.
That's
I think
true.
Just last week, Heidi said, "Do you know anything about these industry accelerators?" And I said, "No." Here we are, 1 week later, blog written. Heidi is an expert. What happens?
Well, I figure if we are asking questions, so are other people. So it might as well benefit from our research.
Yes. Yes. Cool. Okay, so one thing I kind of mentioned, common data model. So this is exactly like those standard tables that we're talking about. And so this is a standard collection of the schemas or the definitions, right, that represent these business concepts. So like we talked about our accounts or our products, things like that. And so this is the ideas here is that it will give a standard definition that other people can build upon, right? We know all the details of an account. So when a partner is building a new solution, they know that this is what should be in an account and that's what I can extend from. So I don't think knowing the common data model is really going to impact a lot of what you're doing, but it's important just to know that term and know that you can download all the definitions of those as well. And one note is I'll send this presentation to Marin after this call as well, so she can share all these links and fun stuff with you. Cool. All right, so let's talk about everything that is in the Dataverse. So what's in the box, right? So everything we've been talking about, Dataverse is very kind of it's very conceptual, right? But there's a lot of things that are involved that are part of Dataverse, right? So first of all, we have kind of our API there of Dataverse, and that we can use to access Dataverse externally, but I can also use that to access it from Power BI, all the other tools, or all of like my Power Apps and flows, right? All of that can be using the Dataverse API. One note here is that I don't necessarily need to use code, right? Because Power Apps and Power Automate, they all kind of they already speak the language of Dataverse, right? So I have connectors in both of those that can access my Dataverse data through the API, but in a no code or low code format. So don't be scared that it says API there. That doesn't mean that you need to know code to get there, right? So as soon as I try to access that Dataverse, my top layer there is security, right? So I have all of the authentication and authorization and auditing. All of this information is that first layer. So I'm doing my authentication through Active Directory. So if that person doesn't have access to the correct organization, they're not in the right Active Directory groups, right? They're going to get stopped and they won't be able to do it. And then we have all of our security within Dataverse. So do they have access to this particular row or record? Do they have access to this particular column? All of that check is also happening. And then of course we have auditing to check if they do have access and they do something we don't want them to do, we can audit it and make sure that we can look at what change was made and make sure that that was right. And then we have all of this logic. So this is logic that can be available right as part of Dataverse, right? We have our calculated and roll up fields. So that means I can define a new field as calculated and set it up to maybe some two other fields or to get data from a related. We can't get data from I keep thinking I can do that and I can't get data from other places, right? Or you know, combine fields together, things like that. Or roll up fields, which can look at related information. So like if I have an account and let's say our account has related opportunities, I could set a maybe have a roll up field on my account for total number of open opportunities, right? And it could roll up and say how many opportunities are there and how many of them are open. And those get updated on a schedule, things like that. I also have business rules that I mentioned, and I can have this firing just on the form, or I can have it fire at the table level, meaning that it would even fire if Power Automate wrote something, right? So I could say, like, maybe if the account had a certain type, I would want to set this other field to required or set the value of another field. I can do that kind of stuff with business rules. I also have duplicate detection. So if I'm trying to create a contact that already exists, they're going to get an error told, go back, make sure this is really what you want. And then I also have plugins to do code, which again can fire as a part of that save operation, could fire from Power Automate, or could fire just from the form. You have some options there. And then we also have workflows, which is kind of an older, we still call them classic workflows, but they still have their place. I think both Heidi and I spent a long time working with them, so they still have special place in our heart. But workflows are another like no code option to add functionality to Dataverse, right, or to Dynamix. Next bit here is our data, right? So we have all kinds of options here for our reporting and reviewing our data. We can add some validation, either we have validation on the form with our business rules, but additionally we can add data validation such as based on kind of our data, how we defined our data model, right? So I can define a choice field or an option set field that only has certain options available. So if I tried to write another option to that field, it would fail because it needs to meet that certain criteria. Or if I set up, say, a field that I want to be a percentage, I could set the minimum and maximum to be 0 to 100, right? And if something tries to write a value more than that, it's going to fail because it doesn't meet the validation of that field. And like we said, all of this is part of that common data model. And so the other piece of this Dataverse stuff is all of our storage, right? So one thing that's cool about using any of the tools of the Power Platform, but especially Dataverse, of course, is that I don't have to worry about all of this. So I don't have to care about where this data is stored. I just know it is in Dataverse. And Microsoft is taking care of making sure it's stored in the most effective way, right? So we have the relational database, but additionally there's using file and blob storage for like attachments, files that are attached, things like that. Log files are used for like our auditing data. And then additionally, we have things like, we have I'm trying to remember the word, some of the search functionality that we're using, right? The Dataverse search and the searching within any of the Dynamix products, right? There's additional like indexing and things going on to make those searches perform well. And all of the data for that is being handled, right? And additionally, we have the option to bring this data over to Data Lake if we wanted to, so that we could do additional reporting from there, right? So especially when we're talking about Power BI too, and we see reporting on here, there's several options, right? We can have reporting within Dynamix or within Dataverse, like charts and dashboards. But additionally, we could do that in Power BI, and we could have Power BI looking directly at Dataverse and doing the reporting off of that. Or we also have the option to copy all this data to a data lake or like some kind of reporting database. And then Power BI would be looking at that database instead of looking directly at your production environment. And that can be really good if you have a large volume of data, if you have a lot of users as well and you want to reduce any potential like performance impacts, right? And then finally, we have integrations, right? So all of this stuff is, again, supported out of the box. We can do eventing, so using the Azure Service Bus and all that fun stuff, and professional developers, you can work with events. We also can work with webhooks, again, with our professional developers, or we can export this data either to Data Lake or just exporting specific tables and data that we're working with. So that's a long explanation, but a lot of things. The kind of my goal of this slide, and I did steal this slide from Microsoft Ignite. Someone else smarter than me at Microsoft made this lovely slide, but I love it because it really does show all the things that you don't have to, oops, sorry, got excited. All the things that you don't have to think about, right? So all of this is happening in Dataverse, and you can just go into like that Power Platform Admin Center and just set up a database, right? And all of this stuff is happening, and you don't even have to like think about that. Heidi, any comments on that?
I think you did an awesome job of breaking this down in a way that makes sense, slowly, bit by bit, and it answers the question of what do I get for this license that I'm paying for? So
license,
you
yes.
get all of that without having to worry about managing any of it, which is awesome.
I had a link here on my slide too. I'm going to see if it still applies. Oh, perfect. I'm going to send this out. So here's this same image on Microsoft Learn as well, talking about the overview of Dataverse that goes into all this stuff as well. Oh yeah, something else we didn't talk about that I see mentioned on this blog as well is like about the scalability, right? So I do not know how to effectively manage network architecture for performance as scale grows, right? I don't know how to do any of that, but Microsoft does, right? And so they've already built all of that into Dataverse and into your Power Platform environment, right? So that's kind of one of those other benefits. Cool. Any other questions about this or anything before we start talking about first-party apps? I think we're right on time schedules, so doing good.
Ooh, good question. Can you edit a virtual table on Dataverse?
Oh, that's such a good question. So let's back up for a little bit for people who don't know what virtual tables are. So virtual tables are not really there, but they're kind of there, right? So I have the ability to say, I want my users who are working in my model-driven app or even my Canvas app, I want them to be able to reference data that is from another data source. And let's say it's a really big data source. Like maybe I work with a large volume of products and that's managed in a separate ERP table or ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning. That's what it stands for. Maybe. Sure. So I'm working with another database, right? And that's where all my products are. And there's like hundreds of thousands of them. So I don't want to create duplicates of those in Dataverse and need to sync them back and forth. So instead I create a virtual table, and my virtual table will say, hey, all the products are over here. And in Dynamix, I want to see these certain data points that are coming from there, right? And so I believe now that should support my create, read, and update, right? Previously, it only supported you could view your virtual data, but I believe within the last few releases, now it supports everything, right? So I can view that data, but I can also make changes to that data from within the virtual entity. But personally, they kind of scare me because they're not really there, but they are there. So it kind of hurts my brain, and I haven't used them myself. Heidi, do you have any real world experience?
I do not, because for what we have needed, where we've analyzed it, creating a custom connector through Power Automate was a simpler idea. So that would be interesting. When would you use a virtual table versus creating a custom connector in Power Automate? I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm going to ask that question and see what other people say.
Yeah, I thought I was trying to see. I'll have to see if I can find another resource. I thought Mike might have done some presentation on this, but I'm not sure. Hopefully it wasn't at my chapter and I forgot. That would be bad. Yeah, I'll have to take a look and see if we can find some more resources on virtual entities. So short answer, in Dataverse is where I would create the virtual entity and set up that reference to the other, that other data source. And then it is our understanding that you can, within Dynamix or whatever app you're using to access your Dataverse data, you do have the ability to create, read, update, and delete data in that virtual table wherever it lives. But the questions that you should be asking for is, does that make sense? Or should you be using another solution, right? And a lot of that depends on how you want to handle your security of that other table and all kinds of fun stuff there.
Yeah, we have a question from Hannah. Oh, this always bums me out. Can we use these features on premise?
So
it depends.
It depends. Let's break it up. A lot of this Dataverse functionality that we've been talking about, most of that still applies to your on-premise data dynamics, right? You're using Dynamix. All of that is still, it's going to be using a lot of the same Dataverse functionality. So like a lot of your calculated and roll-up fields, business rules, workflows, all of that still applies. When we start talking about the other components of the Power Platform, so our Power Apps, our Canvas Power Apps, and our Power Automate and Power BI, yes, maybe, right? So then I can theoretically connect with my on-premise data source. There's just some things you need to do in there to connect. And all of that would be online, right? So I wouldn't have a on-premise Power Apps, right? And then virtual entities, I have to check on that. I think they are also available on-premise.
Yeah, but I don't know that you can do all of the CRUD operations.
Right. There are still some limitations. But Heidi, you wanted to say something about on-premise.
Oh, just a note, Hannah. Power Automate is they like to say you can use the on-premise data gateway to interact in there, but it's really not the same, and you won't be able to use it in the same way. So I'm sorry, but no, all of those functionalities are not possible for on-premise. But like Kylie said, on this screen, you have security, all that stuff. You have all the logic stuff, and you can have some of the data stuff, but where you don't really have these advantages comes into that storage and integration section of this slide when you're on premise, because you're doing that yourself. Your IT department's doing all that for you. Was there anything specific you were hoping that you could use, Hannah?
No, not really. I was just wondering about the security, if the security is the same as on-premise.
Yeah, I don't think there's any changes in the security area. Kylie, do you agree with that?
I agree with that. Yeah. Most of all your security concepts should apply. The only things that wouldn't apply would be if they were related to new features that are only available in like online, right, versus on-premise. And I don't think if you're on the newest version on-premise, there shouldn't be very much of that. Let me find I have a presentation on security. I'm always talking about security. I will be doing 3 presentations in the fall about it. 2, maybe 2. I have them all recorded to post again. But here's one from earlier this year, I think, all about security, and everything there should apply to, I guess I should have written that in the comment, but that's fine. Everything should apply to the, here's what I'm trying to do.
I tagged the wrong Hannah in my comments, sorry.
Well, you're making sure the other Hannah is paying attention. Yeah, everything when we talk about security is all going to apply to on-prem and online. Like all the you can set up access to tables and then streamline which rows within that table they have access to based on owner, and then all of the field level or column level security, all of that is still available on premise. So yeah, good question.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what's called first-party apps. So you'll probably hear this term as you're learning about Dynamix, and it's a bit confusing, right? And basically what it means is that Microsoft has some apps that are available for Dynamix, right? So I have my Dataverse on the bottom, and I could create any model-driven app off that I want to. But additionally, they've provided all of these model-driven apps with specific functionality that they think is necessary for sales or for marketing or whatever. And those include certain standard tables and certain functionality, and of course licensing as well, right? So there's specific sales licensing that enables you for certain sales features and things like that. And then the other piece that we don't even talk about on here is the accelerators on top of that, right? So I could have my sales app, and then I could add on a sales accelerator that gives me additional functionality, right? So today we wanted to talk about the three kind of big ones. Oh, I'm not at that slide yet. Okay. So these apps break down into a few different sections. And one thing, quick call out here is some of these slides I borrowed from the lovely Julie Yak and their 365 training. So she has a kind of quick half-hour overview of the Dynamix 365 first-party apps. And some of these slides are from there, and that training is available for free. And I have that link at the end of this presentation as well, so you can check that out. But so we've broken down our Dynamix apps into three different subsets, right? We have our ERP app. So this includes things like finance and operations, supply chain management, project operations, things like that. And then we have our CRM apps. So that's where Heidi and I came from, is working with CRM solutions or customer relationship management. So this is anything related to, managing our customer. And this is where a lot of the kind of core business of Dynamix 365 is. And that's where a lot of the apps that we're going to talk about are, right? Sales, customer service, field service, marketing, and also still some of project operations. And then there's kind of everything else, these extra apps for Business Central and human resources that still fit into Dynamix 365, but they're like a little bit different, right? So when we talk about our ERP applications, this is where we have like our finance applications to enhance your financial decision making, unify and automate business processes, finding ways to have strategic impact and minimize costs. When we talk about our supply chain, this includes anything for our supply chain management and guides. So there's this cool guides that you can use with HoloLens. I think we're going to see it in the demo, I have a video to show later as well. And there's you can use the HoloLens and do kind of augmented reality, right? So I'm wearing a like virtual headset, and it's showing me like where to do a specific repair and cool stuff like that. And then we also have things like commerce for like building your store and built-in fraud protection and all of that. Then when we go over to the CRM side, this is usually what we're referring to when we talk about these first-party apps, right? We're usually referring to sales, customer service, and field service that we're going to talk about more. And these are the model-driven apps, right? So I can build my own model-driven app, or I have my sales model-driven app. And these are also sometimes called customer engagement or CE, right, apps. So you probably heard that term earlier. I think I said that earlier in this presentation as well. And you could work with all of this data the same with your custom apps for custom model-driven apps or custom Canvas apps if you wanted to. And of course, all of this is customizable. And and a lot of this, there is overlap, right? So just because it's not like if I get customer service, I don't get any of the account, or I don't get accounts because accounts is sales, right? There's going to be overlap, right? So if I had sales and customer service, they're working with the same set of accounts, right? And they could both be working with opportunities and things like that. And then of course we have everything else. So customer voice is where we'd be doing surveys and dealing with customer satisfaction. Business Central is kind of an older tool, but still in use to run kind of a small business and includes some of the ERP or database like functionality and some of the CRM or customer facing functionality, right? Or working with customers functionality. And then of course we have human resources that we also kind of mentioned that you can connect with LinkedIn and use to manage like hiring new employees and all that. But the kind of big three apps like we've talked about here are sales, customer service, and field service. And again, we'll say these are just model-driven apps that are built on top of Dataverse. So what your licensing is paying for is for the use of whatever standard tables are a part of that app, the special app, set up from Microsoft, and any specific functionality that's available for sales, right? And we can use all of the functionality for Dataverse, like our security, like the customization, everything that we talked about, we can use that within these apps. And I'll also make a quick note about, like we talked about, there's overlap between these, but also there's kind of different levels of functionality too that are available with different licensings and silly things like that that you just need to keep in mind. And so one thing that kind of I've been working with recently is marketing, right? So there's a whole separate marketing app that has all kinds of really advanced, cool marketing functionality, but there is some core marketing functionality that's available as part of sales, right? Your marketing lists, you're sending emails, sending bulk emails, that kind of stuff. So a lot of times the question isn't necessarily, where sometimes there's a question of scale, right? And how advanced of the functionality do you need? Because I might be able to do some of it within the license I already have or the tool I already have. So just something to think about. All right. Let's talk about sales. So sales includes kind of relationship sales. They have this product visualize you can use. And the core items really are the lead. They have several processes, right? Where I start with a lead and I can convert them to an opportunity. And then I'm using my opportunity as it's what I'm selling, right? And I can convert what I'm selling to a quote, and then I can convert that quote to an order and convert that order to an invoice. And then I actually, ship off the stuff, and I can do all of that within the tool. And it can also has items for goals, right? I could have team goals or individual goals that I can configure as a part of sales. And I think one quick note is like the core, for me, usually the core functionality of the sales tool is really my accounts, my contacts, and my opportunities. There is this great, we can do our whole product catalog and we can manage it and do this whole, opportunity to quote to order invoice, but I don't see that used a whole lot, sometimes, but not super often. But that's okay, right? And that's the other benefit, right? Because I can pick and choose and get what I want. So our kind of benefits here are to convert our leads faster. We can also make sure we know how to nurture each customer and know, oops, why did you decide to go there? Yep. We nurture each customer, how we can move forward and handle that. And then, get insights into our pipeline to maximize our revenue. And finally, so part of this, or part of, there are two different sales licensing. And so one of them includes like relationship sales that you can add in LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and you can even sync in data from LinkedIn into your Dynamix environment. So you can see information about that, which is pretty cool. Or there are other tools you can purchase to do that. And finally, we have our product visualize, right? That you can use to show, you can do this like with Amazon, and there's tools like that you can do within Dataverse as well, or Dynamix as well. So if you wanted to view a particular product in, real space, you can do that. But let's do a quick demo. So I have a few things to show you over here. So this is my sales thing. Perfect. So this is just a sales trial. I haven't done anything in here, right? I set up a trial. I set up an office trial, and then I set up a sales trial on top of that. And we haven't made any configuration in here. So everything that you're seeing is part of the out of the box sales functionality, right? So you'll see here, we talked a little bit about reporting that you have available. So all of this reporting here is like these charts and dashboards. This is all stuff that came out of the box, but you can also build yourself and customize and see all of this. So not as dynamic as the Power BI stuff you'll see, but still pretty cool. And see my recent calls, see my pipeline stages and all kinds of fun stuff. And so you'll see, I'm just going to pop down to my accounts. Hopefully things will load for me. After Heidi said at the beginning, I never do demos because they never work. And I'm like, oh, good thing I plan to do a demo. Thanks.
Dude, I don't never do demos.
I know, I'm just kidding. But I did want to show you, I want to show you accounts. So this is, like we said, the common data model, right? So some of the stuff that's important here, all of this stuff is out of the box. I can add it. I have my address, I have some of this information, right? And I have my linked contacts. And I also have the ability to do activities. So in my timeline here, something that's really important, when you talk about CRM or customer relationship management, a big part of managing that relationship is your communication, right? So what you can do here is track, like, I have a new appointment coming up with them, or I record that you did have a phone call with them, or you have to follow up on a specific task. All of that can be done within your timeline. And that's all, like we said, all of that is out of the box, right? And then we see this guy's linked to a contact, so we can use that to jump over to our contact record. And we'll see on our contact, they have the same timeline, right? Because I could record an activity specific to a contact or to the whole account, depending on who I talked to or what I talked about. And the contact also has some of the same information, but it's different information from my account, right? Because the contact might be at a different address, and like our contact has a mobile phone, where an account's not going to have a mobile phone because they're a business. And we have all kinds of different information here. We can link them together. But yeah, so that's all part of the common data model. But let's try and follow. I'm going to follow we'll follow like the full sales process, right? What that looks like, and just kind of show you how that works, I guess, by design, whether people use it or not.
Yeah, and while you're taking a sip of your tea, I do want to make one little call out too. I know we're talking a lot about the common data model and the Power Platform. A really cool out-of-the-box integration here is with the Microsoft 365 platform too. So that timeline that Kylie was showing you, that all syncs natively over to Outlook as Outlook meetings. If you turn on the Teams integration, those little phone call icons that were next to phone numbers can open up Teams and call directly. So we're going to give a little love to the Microsoft 365 platform too.
That's a great call out. Yeah. And what's cool about the Outlook app for Outlook is you can even configure all that in a trial, right? You don't need to have your Outlook, like your computer Outlook program, right? You can just use the Outlook on the web and try all of that stuff out. Makes for a great demo. Okay, so let's say a lead is a new person, right? I met somebody at a trade show and they were kind of interested. I would create them as a lead. So let's create a new person this way, and we're going to do the full process. So I can even scan their, whatever it's called, business card if I wanted to. I guess this should say trade show.
That's a very creative name there.
Very creative. I should name them, I don't know. I was in a training the other day and they all had such great names, and it was very upsetting for me who had not exciting names. As I continue with my not exciting names. Okay, so we fill out some details here, right, about this lead. We're going to save them, and then we're going to, we'll see, view the record. And so here within the lead, I could record my conversation with them. And we'll put something in there so we can watch how that moves throughout the process. And I can record more details as I work with them, right? So maybe I learn more about them while we're chatting that I want to record here, I can. I'm going to go ahead and add a phone call for the future. Let's say I want to discuss options. And I'm going to schedule it. I have a date somewhere. I'm going to schedule that for the end of the week, right? So we'll say I have a call coming up with them. And what I can do is I can qualify it as an opportunity, which I can either do here or as part of this, we call this the business process flow. And that's just a way that I can kind of guide users through the process. So I can say if there's any existing records to link them to, or, did I identify the decision maker, all kinds of stuff. And when I click next stage, this is going to go ahead and qualify the record, and I can create a new opportunity right from here. And we'll just say save and close. It's fine. So what this is doing is when I'm qualifying that, then it's going to link this record. It's going to create the opportunity. It's going to create my accounts and contacts and all of that fun stuff. Oh, I thought it would create my accounts and contacts. I must have missed something. That's fine. But I can create my whole opportunity from here as well. And then I can continue using this process to walk through the next stages of this sales process, right? So I went from a lead, now this lead is on an opportunity, and you can see I still have my phone call here that I created because I still need to follow up with that. And then I can continue walking through this process to provide different items to them and close out this opportunity. Let's go ahead and I'm just going to link some products on here. So maybe I'm working with them. Let's see what products we have in our trial. But I can decide which products they're going to buy, right? They're going to buy some of these things. Let's say I can change how much I'm charging them and how many. Say they're going to get 5 of these.
Makes me want another cup of coffee.
Yeah. My tea got a little cold while I was chatting. So me too. But anyways, yeah, I can add them on there and you can see it's automatically like calculating some of my revenue and some of this information here. Like all of this, like I said, all of that's just out of the box sales. And of course, you'll want to review and make sure these line up with business rules, line up with what makes sense for the organization. But you can kind of review that. And then I can convert this into a quote. So when I create a new quote, it's going to take those same products that I added to my opportunity and add them on here to my quote, as this is what I'm asking. This is what they're asking for. This is the price I have suggested it for. And, this is how much we're going to charge them. And all I have to do here is activate. There we go. Activate my quote. Oh, I missed something. Oh, this is because I didn't create my person. We'll just link with that. That's fine. All I should have to do is activate this quote, and then it creates that into an order. So again, it's taking over all of my same, or I activated it, and then I create my order. Sorry, missed a step in there. And it's going to take over my same products, and I can choose to close out my opportunity because it's because something's happening, right? Because I'm sending my order. And so my order gets the same products. And then I can use this order to track sending of the items, and even go from here to create the invoice. So the next stage of sending them the actual invoice asking for them to pay us, right? And so each kind of business, I think, has a slightly different probably definition for your what do we track on our opportunity versus the quote and the order and the invoice, right? Generally, our opportunity is, hey, a sale could happen. My quote is saying, this is what you want to buy and this is how much I want to pay you for. Then or I want you to pay me, right? And then my order is saying, okay, we've agreed and we're putting this order in place to actually make it happen. And then the invoice is saying, okay, you need to pay me this much and when was it paid, right? But each, based on the business process, they'll determine how do I break this up, right? Or when do I go to that next stage? But I just wanted to quickly kind of show you that all of that functionality is available. And like you see here, you can mark it paid or not paid. But there's additionally a whole bunch of stuff that we didn't talk about, right? Like within our opportunity, there's items we can do there to do our forecasts and things like that. But we also have the sales accelerator that we mentioned, where there's some like AI-driven insights that are just, again, out of the box based on your licensing. It'll tell you, hey, you have this email that should be going out soon, or you have a follow-up call coming up, and different things that you should look at with a score of like how important it is, right? So there's so many cool things here as a part of sales. Heidi, what did you have anything to add on sales or any of this stuff we should talk about?
This is a great overview. I think the only thing I might add is that just because it has all these areas in Dynamix doesn't mean you have to use them all. A lot of people that I work with have a full accounting system and they don't want to invoice out of CRM, right? This is your sales, and most people, if they have a separate system, will take this to the quote level and then push it over to an ERP system, which is a great use case for Power Automate. So take all this stuff from Dataverse and move it into an ERP system. But you can manage it all here, but just because it's here doesn't mean you have to.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I think most people I've worked at, you're using your accounts and your contacts and your opportunities, and then somewhere you're figuring out where is that dividing line where I go to something else, and does the rest of this functionality support like really what I need or not?
Yep. So, yeah, and there were some really cool export capabilities available on the quote. So you could export your quote into a PDF and have a formatted PDF and then send that out through email, all through Dynamix 365. So that's another big one that we see too.
Yeah, let me show that quickly on one of these. Oh, hey, look at our cool new functionality. Let's just look at this opportunity. What I want. Let's just go to our recent records. Where's my recent records? What is going on this sales trial? All these cool things that I do not want here. Let me open my record. There we go. Yeah, so one of these things that we're talking about, I want this full screen, please, is like word templates, right? So I can choose to, of course, it's not going to show up on my opportunity. Look at our quote. It's just demo gods are fighting with me today, right? What I want to do, yeah, so I have the option, I can export my quote to a PDF, right? And I can view, this is like, again, out of the box, but you can customize this, create your own. And so you can have your whole, right, the quote that you're going to print and give to the customer or send to the customer. And we also have Word templates as well, where it's kind of similar, that I can design a summary of my quote or whatever I want and have that come as a Word file be created that I can use to provide that to the customer. Bring that over. So yeah, I have a few options there and I can configure all of that. as needed to provide to the customer. So yeah, great call out. Cool. So let's talk a little bit about customer service as well. So customer service is the next piece of this, right? So sales is I'm selling to a customer and completing an order. And then for customer service, I am providing service to that customer, right? They have a problem and I'm working with them on it. I'm working with them and I'm talking with them with a problem, right? So this is where you'll see things like cases. We also have remote assist, so you could access help someone online. And we're also talking about virtual agents. So I have some kind of virtual agents that I can use for customer service specifically. And so I can use this to manage my customer support experience. For case management, also includes things like knowledge bases, managing preferences, and you'll also hear about omni-channel. Omni-channel just means that uh, there's multiple channels that a customer could contact you, and you want to be able to view those all together, right? Because they could reach out they could call you on the phone, right? They could reach out via the website. They could send you an email, and you need to be able to work with them through all of those channels and know what's going on, right? Remote assist, like we showed or like we talked about, is similar to our HoloLens, just being able to work with our workers in real time to get the solutions that we need. And we also have custom virtual agents like we talked about. So you can customize these. And I think there are some that are out of the box as part of customer service that you can look at. So let's do a really high level demo of customer service as well. We'll jump over here. So again, this is just our customer service workspace, but I think we have two here. Excuse me, there we go. So you'll see, this is all, again, just our agent dashboard out of the box, right? I can see my cases, and within these cases, I have links to my customers. So this is my same account. I was looking at my products, right? The same thing I'm linking to my opportunities in sales. I have all of that information here. And I also have my timeline where I can track those activities the same as I did on my other records, right? And I'd be able to see this information also up on my account level, right? So if I have some people using the customer service app and some people using the sales app, there's still going to be information going back and forth so that they can work together. And you'll see, so I have some knowledge base things. This is all, a knowledge base is just, what do I need? Is just a list of list of help articles, right? Which generally are only available internally, but if you're using a portal, Power Pages, you could potentially make that available externally. But it's just saying, okay, based on what you're saying here are some potential things that we could link it to, right? So here's some similar cases or some similar knowledge bases articles, and I can just link them to that. And then I can use the same information to help the customer that I'm working with, right? So there's lots of cool functionality here, and let's switch over to their multiple apps, right? So that was let's switch over to our customer service hub. And that will look more like what we're used to, right? So you can see here we have our accounts and contacts. So all of that's the same as what we were seeing over in sales. But then additionally, you see we have cases and queues, and I have some new dashboards here so I can see what cases I should be working on. And I have different dashboards for kind of my initial support and for higher level support, right? So I maybe have some managers and they're going to see different data here. And some of these reports are also they can update based on information here, right? So I can select a certain product and see just those cases, right? So that's they call these interactive dashboards. Not all dashboards in Dynamix have that functionality, but we do have some of that stuff here. So pretty cool. We talked a little bit about cases, right? That's managing my service. And you'll see if I open these up from the hub, I think I will also have, I have that same business process flow or similar business process flow like we saw in opportunities. And all of this is customizable, so I can determine what fits into each of these stages, what is required before I can go to the next stage. And this can change based on information, right? Maybe I have, based on my origin, I could have different stages here. I can do fun stuff like that. And lastly, I'll mention I can use queues to what's the word I'm looking for? To route items, right?
Yeah, it's like a holding container, right? So things have come to a central email address. I think is the easiest way to think of queues, like customer service at whatever company this is.com. And then everything just sits there until a supervisor can get in there and either pawn it out manually to his or her employees, or like you're saying, the automated routing is really cool on that too.
Right. Yeah. I can automatically route these and I'll see who's currently working on it. A manager can route them, or I can even have the agents manage that themselves and say, oh, I'm free, I'm going to work on this one. And they can just, they can pick it and say they're going to work on it. Right. So obviously very high level overview of customer service, but just wanted to make you aware of some of the options that we kind of have in there. And like I said, all of this, we just set up these trials and we haven't done anything in them. And so you guys can set up a trial like this too and try out all of this same functionality, right? Cool. Okay. Field service. This is the one I know Heidi and I also said we know probably we also do not know as much about this, but it's really cool. It's for managing your technicians in the field. So it handles scheduling, qualifications, and managing your assets. And even if you have IoT devices, right? IoT is Internet of Things, meaning I could have a machine that's connected to the internet that sends out signals and tells me like when it needs maintenance. And I can manage all of that with field service. So I have a quick, I think it's like a 5-minute demo here that I'm going to pop up and play. Yes, just play. But I do think that I forgot to share my audio. So 1 second. I'm going to check off the button. Where did our share computer audio button go? Am I going insane? Oh, here it is. Yes, I am going insane. Go to your device. 1 second. Apparently, this is not liking me. Better? Okay. Perfect. Let's do that.
Modernize for the digital age with connected field service tools built to drive customer satisfaction and technician productivity to new heights. Microsoft Dynamics 365 for Field Service helps you deliver a seamless end-to-end service experience, where world-class CRM capabilities converge with powerful machine learning, mixed reality, and IoT technology to create a single, integrated solution that is transforming field service management. Built-in intelligence helps you unlock valuable efficiencies, reducing operational costs and empowering your technicians to resolve cases faster. Stay connected to your customers at all times with Azure IoT sensors that transmit real-time data into Dynamics 365, giving your technicians the ability to monitor a customer's equipment remotely and accelerating response time when an issue arises. Your customer's IoT-enabled device has detected an issue, sending an automatic alert to Dynamics 365. The alert immediately creates a new case file, which in turn gets routed to your next available Tier 2 technician. First, the technician attempts to resolve the issue without impacting the customer, sending remote commands directly within Dynamics 365. But this issue requires an on-site fix. To contact the customer about the repair and schedule field service, The technician can choose from a number of different channels: phone, email, SMS, support web, and even social sites. This omni-channel capability helps your technician quickly reach the customer, gather the information needed to create a work order, and schedule service as soon as possible. The automated system intelligently assigns an available technician, factoring in the technician's skills, proximity, and equipment inventory. The assigned field technician receives a push notification with the new booking and reviews the details of the work order. The customer receives an alert that the technician is en route. After arriving on site for the service, the field technician can get step-by-step instructions in Dynamix 365 to ensure the fix is performed with maximum quality. Using state-of-the-art mixed reality remote assist in Microsoft HoloLens, the technician can even initiate a video call with a remote expert to gain additional live support with real-time context. With the upcoming guides functionality, field service organizations can increase process efficiency with real-world instructions available on HoloLens. When the repair is complete, the customer signs the technician's touchscreen, receives an auto notification that the case has been resolved, and gets back to business as usual. Dynamix 365 for field service helps empower your organization to deliver real value to customers, reducing downtime, maximizing quality of service, and engaging them with experiences that resonate. Transform your service experiences today.
That was a
such
very
great,
impressive demo.
such a great demo. I love it.
But to get to that point, there is a lot of setup and configuration. So you could download a free demo of field service. It's not going to look like that yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll say I think field service needs a lot more work than like the sales and customer service, right? There's a lot more, well, just settings you need to configure in terms of your people and their schedules and all kinds of fun stuff, and then all of that automation. So this is a lovely sales demo about what's possible, but there's a lot of extra steps in there. So I think our goal today is to give you an overview of these, but know that there's still more to learn, right? So cool. Okay, so that I know we're getting close to the end of our time, so please feel free to add any other questions that you have in the chat. We wanted to quickly talk about the roadmap and what that means. So what we're talking about is there are these things called release waves. So wave 1 is April to September. So the plans come out in like January. Usually there's early access to some of those features starting around in February, and then general availability comes out in April or later than that, right? Sometimes it's rolling out from April or later than that. And then we have wave 2 that's October to March. So those release plans come out in July, and we can enable them and test them in August, and then general availability or it gets pushed to everybody around in October. This is kind of interesting because I can get some of this. Now, some of this functionality is coming out all the time, right? Previously, it was always, okay, we had our release in April and we had our release in October, but now there are releases happening like every week. So we can see like new functionality showing up before then. So general idea is make sure you review these release notes, at least at a high level, to know some of those functionalities that are on the way, right? And if you are working with a client, you do want to encourage them to test these out, right? So when that early access is available, you want to test that in a lower environment, like their development environment. Test that out and make sure none of that functionality is going to cause issues with what you're working on. So a few items to talk about from the sales roadmap. Always more teams collaboration is showing up, right? Things like presence of records and being able to share records on Teams, They talk about sales acceleration and process automation, like validating emails, more intelligent suggestions, enhancing the sequence designer of like how I nurture people and how I handle kind of my sales process, and continuing enhancements to assigning records. Also, some of the stuff I think is really cool around conversational intelligence, which means basically I can record a call and it will be telling me, like giving me highlights of the call and giving me suggestions of what to do next for this record. So some really cool stuff, and some new enhancements to reporting. From customer service perspective, new enhancements to the unified routing. So changing how I can route my cases automatically. I can route them to whoever's been idle the longest, but it's also, or I can enable routing based on a certain percentage or to preferred agents. And also the thing that the screenshot is I can manage my skills, so I know which agents worked on which topics so that I can have more improvements to my routing. Also more Teams integration, so better swarming, right? So I can bring in other people to help me support this customer. And also summaries of team chats is supposed to be coming, right? So I could be chatting about a case, but then it will automatically provide a summary of that chat to as part of the case, so I can see what's going on. And enhancements for agents, so some new layouts, rich text editor, and personalized analytics. And also, as we saw in our demo, like the AI suggestions of similar cases. So that's a new functionality that's really cool. And also some enhancements to omnichannel. Finally, from the field service roadmap, we have options, some mobility enhancements for our frontline workers. We have optimization for service operations, so making sure my work order can't exceed a certain amount, right? Trading functionality things, and also some enhancements to the resource scheduling. So those are very kind of high level things that I picked out about each of these items, but that I wanted to call out. And really, it's kind of important to take some time to read the release notes, and at least I like to read the table of contents and see what other important information is there, and then kind of go from there and see what I want to dig in more to, right? Or what I think could cause a problem that I need to test, right? Heidi, anything to add on release notes?
No, I do the same thing as you. I check out the summary and then I'll zero in on whatever I'm using or whatever one of my customers are using. So we're doing a customer service implementation. So that's where I went first, right? I want to see what's new and upcoming and let them know what's coming.
Yeah. Cool. So next steps for you guys, I'm going to share this deck with Marin, which has a whole bunch of resources, a whole slide of all kinds of fun things that we have put together for you guys. And plus there were so many links that we shared in the chat. I know we had a question about the recording, if the recording will be shared. I think so, but I'll leave that up to Marin to decide. And Marin, if you don't have somewhere to post that, you could share with either Heidi or I, and we could get that posted too. That would be fine. And like I said, I included the link for Julie's training. And so lastly, we'll encourage you guys to connect with us, and feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever. We're always producing lots of content, so we would love for you guys to check that out, or reach out if you have questions that you'd like to share. Any last thoughts, Heidi?
No, I can't think of anything. Well, stay tuned. Check out my YouTube channel too, because I'm doing a series with Kylie. It's called Power Tips, and we're meeting every 2 weeks to dive into the release notes and see new features that we think are interesting too.
Any other questions from this group before we go? Cool. With all of these enhancements going on, how do we convince potential customers to use these systems without making it seem like they are signing up for less functionality right now? That's a good question. I think I think a lot of this is around I mean, it's all in how you sell it, right? And a lot of it, I think the biggest benefits are the customization, right? So usually I think when I'm talking to new customers, we want to focus on how we can customize for them and usually focus on the functionality that is available now, because there is a whole bunch of functionality available right now. And then if there are specific requirements that come up that deal with another, something that's coming later, I think that's the only time I'd probably bring up the later functionality, right? Because there's just so much, there's so much available now. I don't usually find that they're too worried about these extras, I guess, that are coming later. I'm not sure if you feel differently, Heidi.
Yeah, when I first read your question, Hannah, I started thinking along the same lines as Kylie. It's how you position it, right? So here's the platform today, and it also gets better. They add new features and new functionality, and that rolls out twice a year. Like just positioning it as what you get today, and then, oh my gosh, there's going to be even more cool stuff, and we don't even know what that is yet, which is true.
Yeah. And I think
Any other
keeping in mind
questions?
that our release waves are also always changing, right? Like they might announce something, but it might not always come out on a schedule or when we expect. So it's good if you don't. I wouldn't say, oh well, just wait until October when this comes out, because what if the schedule changes, right? Like focus on what's available now.
Yeah, and Kylie and I found that out when we were looking at Power FX columns in Dataverse. It was listed as functionality that was already delivered, but it was not.
Yeah, but you saw that guy commented and told us where it is, so we can look at that. But that's spoiler alert for a future conversation. Looks
Thanks
like
so
no additional questions. Yeah, so thank you guys. Thank you for having us, and feel free to reach out and let us know what else you need.
Thank you, Heidi and Kylie, for coming in, supporting the Pathfinders Power Platform community. This was awesome session, and we can't wait to have you back.
Of course.
Thanks
Yeah,
so much
thank
for
you.
having us. This was a blast.
Thank you.